Prologue. A Tale of Two Brothers. With the storm's roar echoing a small rupture into the wooden hull of his home, Darion vaguely remembered the hollow night 13 years ago that changed his life forever. Much like this night, a typhoon of incredible proportions darkened the sky. Back then he was young, and the world felt so large and mysterious. His tiny mind harbored dreams of painted, illustrious glory, and his hopeful dark brown eyes mirrored them bravely. Perhaps it was because he was so young that he could recall so little, and perhaps it was even more because he could recall so little that he frustratingly relived this dream every other month. He closed his eyes and strained his mind to remember what he could. Slowly, the real world seemed to fade away. Slowly, he remembered. He remembered first the smell and foggy wisp of powerful magic, eerily looming about him like a smothering, unsettling blanket. His home, illuminated by a soft moisture of lamp and humidity, would ricochet back to life with every clap of thunder. It was a fair home that, in the break of day, would be pleasing to the eyes. Its humble stone demeanor proudly stood against the wind, housing furniture that a family would raise its children on. It had an accent steering towards a pure, white light. To his front stood the dark silhouette of his mother in the doorway. Every time the sky roared, she would light up, and he could only remember her dark hazel eyes as she peered at him. To his left, his older brother, his stubborn silver hair long and his eyes of fierce blue. He could see the vivid anger and fear in his brother's eyes, and the soft stroke of sorrow in his mother's. Her lips would open, and in the shadow of the doorway, she whispered in the most loving, sad tone, "Event care amia." But this is always where the memory would end. This is always the part where he could not remember an ounce more, aside from waking up in his stranger's arms days later, abandoned. Phasing back into reality, Darion shuddered at the thought. It was a terrible night where he lost everything. He was 16 now, and he had not seen his brother nor mother since. Not to mention his father, who, for as far as he knew, did not exist. He stood a proud height of around 6 of his feet in length, and he had a short, spiky dark brown hair to mimic his eyes. Darion knew nothing of his upbringing. He could not even remember his last name. The lady who took him in said he fell straight out of the sky into the local pond, adopted throughout his fall in a soft, white flame. Something out of a fairy tale, she would always say. Her name was Amika, and she was Darion's adopted mother. A humble old woman, she was aged beyond her years and considered the village grandmother. Her dark skin understood the test of time with wrinkles. Her personality had not developed even a dollop of disdain. She was the kindest person throughout, and with her grandson Luke together the three of them lived, cried, and laughed. This was his home and family, although he was born elsewhere. Irritated at his constant flirtation with his memory, Darion closed his eyes once more. His bed, a log sewed in half and filled in with wool pillows, was comfortable enough. Their tiny home shook with the power of the storm. Although small, it was sturdy and tested. They had 2 wooden rooms, shambled together by a large moss-covered wall. He was in what was previously the living room, but was now his makeshift room of 13 years. He imagined Luke and Amika comfortably slept throughout the storm, but to him, the storm represented invoking savage imagery. He snapped his fingers to produce the soft flame, evoking just enough light to see, but not to illuminate. Holding the flame to the crack of the wall where water sprinkled in over him, he counted the seconds until his flame extinguished from the water. It only took 3 seconds, but to him, that was an improvement. Tomorrow, they would practice magic again. Practicing magic through the use of controlled spiritual energy was his favorite part of school. Not necessarily because he was decent at it, but rather because it gave his mind the enjoyment of creating something using his own power. The rain was finally becoming white noise to him, something familiar in that it meant he could finally sleep. Somehow, he had defeated the memory once more. Is it a victory, though? He wondered to himself. He could never remember anything more than that tiny scene. Sometimes he even questioned if it was real. Did he actually have a brother with fine stubborn silver hair? And what does event gaude admium mean? Feeling more defeated than victorious, he closed his eyes to this thought and drifted to sleep, eventually aware no more of the dancing storm ceasing to be. One day, he mumbled, one day I'll find you. Event. His eyes glazed over. Gaude. His words slurred with fatigue. Admium.